Remember when Hollywood stars seemed larger than life? When they carried themselves with such grace and sophistication that you'd think they were royalty? Well, I hate to break it to you, but some of your favorite Golden Age legends had personalities that were anything but golden. Let's dive into the stories Hollywood didn't want you to hear. Hollywood's always been this magical place where dreams come true, hasn't it? But you know what they say about looking too closely at how the sausage gets made. Behind all that glamour and those dazzling smiles, there were some personalities that could curdle milk at 50 paces. We're talking about folks who gave us unforgettable performances and timeless films, sure, but they also left a trail of bruised egos and horror stories that their colleagues are still talking about decades later. Now, I'm not here to tear down legends just for the fun of it. These stories matter because they show us the real cost of unchecked power in Hollywood. From legendary directors who treated people like props to actors who made life miserable for anyone within shouting distance. These tales reveal what happened when fame went to someone's head in the worst possible way. What we're about to explore together proves that sometimes the brightest stars cast the darkest shadows. These 25 figures show us that genius and cruelty can walk hand in hand, and that the line between brilliant artist and absolute nightmare is thinner than we'd ever want to believe. So let's take this journey together and peek behind those carefully constructed public images to see what really went on when the cameras stopped rolling. Otto Preminger. Now here's someone who knew how to make a film. I'll give him that. Otto Preminger directed classics like Laura and Anatomy of a Murder, pictures that still hold up beautifully today. But working with the man? That was a different story entirely. Preminger believed that crushing people's spirits was the secret ingredient to great filmmaking, and he turned psychological warfare into an art form. His treatment of actors was so notoriously cruel that even hardened Hollywood veterans would warn newcomers about what they were getting themselves into. Take poor Tom Tryon, who starred in The Cardinal. Preminger's abuse was so systematic and brutal that it drove Tryon to abandon acting altogether. The man literally became a novelist just to escape the film industry after what Preminger put him through. Can you imagine? On just the second day of filming, Preminger fired and rehired Tryon within an hour, then spent months publicly humiliating him in front of the entire cast and crew. But here's the thing that really gets me. Preminger actually fired Tryon in front of his visiting parents just to maximize the embarrassment. Then he had the nerve to rehire him once he was satisfied with the humiliation he'd dished out. That's not directing. That's sadism with a camera nearby. His cruelty wasn't limited to leading men either. He'd reduce actresses to tears through public attacks and personal insults, all while convincing himself it was necessary for his artistic vision. Many folks in Hollywood considered working with Preminger career damage, not because of the films themselves, but because of what he'd do to your spirit in the process. Harry Cohn. If Otto Preminger was bad, Harry Cohn was in a league of his own. As the head of Columbia Pictures, Cohn wielded power like a weapon, earning himself the delightful nickname, the meanest person in Hollywood. And believe me, that was quite an achievement in those days. His office setup tells you everything you need to know about the man. Picture this, a massive room with his desk way at the far end. So anyone who wanted to see him had to make this long, humiliating walk across white carpet, while he sat there watching them approach like some kind of emperor. He even installed listening devices throughout the studio to spy on employees and actors, creating this atmosphere where nobody felt safe having a private conversation. Cohn's treatment of actors was legendary for all the wrong reasons. He'd manipulate their personal lives, control who they could date, and use their private struggles as leverage to keep them in line. His casting couch practices were notorious. He routinely pressured actresses into inappropriate relationships in exchange for roles or career advancement. You know what really tells you everything about how people felt about Harry Cohn? At his funeral, the place was packed, and comedian Red Skelton quipped that it proved the old saying, give the public something they want to see, and they'll come out for it. Even his own funeral became a joke about how much people wanted to make sure he was actually gone. Alfred Hitchcock. This one's going to be tough for a lot of you to hear, because Alfred Hitchcock created some of the most beautiful, suspenseful films ever made. Rear Window, Vertigo, Psycho, masterpieces, every one of them. But the man behind the camera? Well, that's a much darker story. Hitchcock famously said, actors should be treated like cattle, and unfortunately, he meant it. His controlling behavior stemmed from his own childhood experiences of feeling powerless, which led him to exercise absolute control over others as adults. But his treatment of Tippi Hedren during The Birds crossed every line imaginable. When Hedren rejected his advances, Hitchcock retaliated in calculated, disturbing ways. During filming, she was told they'd use mechanical birds for a bedroom attack scene, but instead, she spent 5 days with live birds being thrown at her and attached to her body with elastic bands. The ordeal only ended when a bird nearly pecked her eye. But it didn't stop there. After she rebuffed him, Hitchcock used his industry power to sabotage her career, blocking her from receiving significant roles. This wasn't just a difficult director. This was someone using his position to punish a woman for not submitting to his advances. The cruelty extended to other productions too. During The 39 Steps, he left actress Madeleine Carroll handcuffed to her co-star for hours, claiming he'd lost the key. She ended up with bruises and humiliation, all for Hitchcock's amusement. Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin gave us The Tramp, one of cinema's most beloved characters, and films like City Lights that still move audiences to tears. His iconic character, with all that resilience in the face of hardship, came directly from his own traumatic childhood experiences in London's workhouses, where he endured brutal treatment and separation from his mother. But Chaplin's personal life? That's where things get complicated and frankly disturbing. One of the most troubling patterns was his relationships with much younger women. His first 2 wives were both 16 years old when he married them. He was 29 and 35, respectively. That kind of age gap raises serious questions about the power dynamics in those relationships. The public really started paying attention during the Joan Barry paternity case in the 1940s. While blood tests eventually cleared Chaplin of paternity, the trial revealed uncomfortable details about his personal life that left many people feeling differently about their beloved tramp. His pattern of seeking much younger women may have been connected to his childhood trauma and his need to recreate a protective relationship he never had, though this doesn't excuse the inappropriate behavior. Eventually, his political views during the Red Scare led to his self-imposed exile to Switzerland, where he spent his remaining years. John Ford. John Ford directed some of the greatest westerns ever made. The Searchers, Stagecoach, films that defined an entire genre. But his genius came at a terrible human cost, because Ford believed that breaking people down emotionally was the key to authentic performances. The most shocking incident happened during Mr. Roberts, when Ford actually punched Henry Fonda in the face. Fonda was trying to discuss script concerns when Ford just sprang up and hit him. This was particularly devastating because the two had been close friends for decades, and the betrayal permanently damaged their relationship, despite Ford's tearful apology 15 minutes later. Ford's psychological manipulation was systematic. During The Informer, he kept Victor McLaglen constantly off balance by getting him intoxicated, changing schedules without notice, verbally abusing him, and filming scenes when McLaglen thought they were just rehearsing. His treatment of John Wayne was particularly complex. He verbally abused Wayne for months, calling him names and undermining his confidence. Yet Wayne tolerated this because Ford had made him a star with Stagecoach. Many actors described working with Ford as psychological warfare, never knowing when they'd become his next target. Sean Connery. Sean Connery will always be the original James Bond. Suave, charming, the epitome of cool. His path to stardom began in grinding poverty in Edinburgh, where his family was so poor that he left school at 13 to work as a milkman and later took jobs, including coffin polisher, to support his struggling family. But in 1965, Connery shocked people when he told Playboy magazine, "I don't think there is anything particularly wrong with hitting a woman," describing physical violence as justified under certain circumstances. 22 years later, in 1987, Barbara Walters asked him about those comments, and he said, "I haven't changed my opinion." Connery's attitudes may have been shaped by his working-class upbringing. In an era when physical discipline was more commonly accepted, though he always remained proud of his humble beginnings. Beyond these troubling views, he was known to be difficult on set, often clashing with directors and co-stars. His strong-willed nature sometimes crossed the line into arrogance. Kirk Douglas. Kirk Douglas was a powerhouse during Hollywood's golden age, delivering intense performances in films like Spartacus and Paths of Glory. He even defied the Hollywood blacklist during the McCarthy era, which took real courage. Born to Russian Jewish immigrants in brutal poverty, Douglas endured a childhood where his father preferred bars to family and even gambled away Douglas's bar mitzvah money. Years after Douglas's passing, Lana Wood, Natalie Wood's sister, accused him of assault when Natalie was just 16 years old. These allegations, coming so long after the fact, added a troubling dimension to his legacy. Douglas was also widely known for his womanizing. He reportedly used his Hollywood status to exploit young actresses and had numerous extramarital affairs. There was even speculation about his involvement in the mysterious disappearance of actress Jean Spangler in 1949, though no evidence ever connected him to the case. Despite his notorious reputation, Douglas demonstrated genuine love for his sons later in life, ensuring they all attended university and openly acknowledging his mistakes, showing a capacity for self-reflection that contradicted his earlier behavior. Frank Faye. Frank Faye pioneered modern stand-up comedy, paving the way for the monologue style we know today. In the 1920s, he was earning an astronomical $17,500 per week in vaudeville. That's serious money, even by today's standards. His quick wit and innovative style made him a genuine star. But Faye's massive ego and controversial views alienated nearly everyone he worked with. His cruel behavior toward others may have originated from his own traumatic childhood experiences, creating a pattern of lashing out at those he perceived as inferior. His colleagues described him as arrogant, dismissive, and nearly impossible to collaborate with. His anti-Semitic views and public displays of bigotry made him particularly despised in the entertainment community. His marriage to Barbara Stanwyck was fraught with reports of emotional and physical abuse. Faye reportedly tried to control every aspect of Stanwyck's career and personal life, with friends describing his treatment as suffocating and total. Milton Berle once told a story about Faye making an offensive remark about his heritage, prompting Berle to physically confront him. While Faye's contributions to comedy were historically significant, his toxic personality ensured his legacy would be remembered more for his faults than his achievements. Steven Seagal. Steven Seagal dominated action films in the 1990s with movies like Under Siege and Hard to Kill. His martial arts background and tough guy persona made him a box office draw, but his off-screen reputation? That's a completely different story. During the filming of Executive Decision, Seagal reportedly physically assaulted John Leguizamo, shoving him against a wall for laughing during a rehearsal. That kind of aggressive behavior became part of his reputation. His treatment of women drew even more serious criticism. Jenny McCarthy alleged that during her audition for Under Siege 2, Seagal asked her to undress, claiming it was required for a role that didn't actually include such scenes. Other actresses, including Portia de Rossi and Juliana Margulies, made similar accusations, with Margulies describing an incident where Seagal brought a weapon to a private meeting. While his early movies remained popular with action fans, Seagal's reputation for arrogance and inappropriate behavior has overshadowed his career achievements. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford's rise from poverty to stardom seemed like the ultimate Hollywood success story. Her performances in films like Mildred Pierce showcased genuine talent and determination. But Crawford's glamorous image concealed a childhood of horrible abuse. Born poor in San Antonio, to a mother who never wanted her, abandoned by her father, and subjected to mistreatment by her stepfather from age 11. Crawford's most notorious legacy comes from her treatment of her adopted children, particularly daughter Christina, who exposed her mother's behavior in the devastating memoir, Mommy Dearest. Crawford's own traumatic childhood created a cycle of abuse that she perpetuated with her own children, unable to break free from the patterns of cruelty she had experienced. According to Christina's accounts, Crawford was an alcoholic who flew into violent rages, subjecting her children to physical beatings and psychological torment. The infamous wire hangers incident became a symbol of her unstable parenting. Despite her monstrous reputation as a mother, those who worked with Crawford professionally often noted her incredible work ethic and generosity toward crew members, suggesting a complex personality capable of both great cruelty and unexpected kindness. Bette Davis. Bette Davis was a powerhouse actress with 11 Academy Award nominations and 2 wins. Her performances in All About Eve and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane remain legendary. But Davis's fierce independence was forged through childhood trauma when her father abandoned the family in 1916, leaving her mother to struggle financially while trying to provide for Bette and her sister. Behind her commanding screen presence was someone known for her sharp tongue and volcanic temper. The abandonment by her father created deep wounds that affected all 4 of her marriages, leaving her with trust issues and a desperate need to maintain control. Davis was notorious for her feuds, particularly with Joan Crawford. Their animosity during Whatever Happened to Baby Jane was legendary. Davis allegedly kicked Crawford during a scene and served her a rat for lunch. Her cruelty extended to younger actresses, whom she'd humiliate and undermine through cutting remarks. Her treatment of her own children was equally harsh, with daughter B.D. Hyman later writing about Davis's emotional abuse and neglect. Despite her harsh exterior, those who knew Davis recognized that her cruelty often masked vulnerability, particularly her fear of aging in an industry that discarded older women. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn was Hollywood's quintessential swashbuckling hero in classics like The Adventures of Robin Hood and Captain Blood. With his good looks and dashing presence, he epitomized Golden Age charm. However, Flynn's charming exterior masked psychological wounds from a traumatic childhood, where he endured abuse from his mother, leaving him with unresolved feelings of neglect and abandonment. Flynn's most notorious controversy came in 1942 when he was charged with statutory violations involving 2 teenage girls. Although he was ultimately acquitted, the scandal permanently damaged his public image and led to the phrase, "in like Flynn." Flynn's pattern of reckless behavior can be traced to his childhood trauma, including beatings that left him wanting to run away from home at age 7, experiences that instilled a desperate need to escape reality through alcohol and dangerous adventures. His lifestyle was marked by excessive drinking, frequent affairs, and wild parties that constantly fueled tabloid gossip. Those who knew Flynn personally noted that despite his larger-than-life persona, he privately struggled with deep melancholy and self-doubt, often confiding about feeling empty despite his success. His financial troubles and hard living eventually took their toll, and he passed away at just 50 years old. Judy Garland. Judy Garland gave us Over the Rainbow and captured hearts as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. Her powerful voice and emotional performances made her one of Hollywood's most beloved entertainers. However, Garland's path to stardom was paved with exploitation that began when her stage mother started giving her stimulants for energy and sedatives for sleep, beginning this dangerous cycle when Judy was only 10 years old. Under contract with MGM, Garland endured constant abuse from studio executives who treated her like property rather than a human being. Studio head Louis B. Mayer cruelly nicknamed her "My Little Hunchback" due to her short stature, while executives enforced a punishing diet of chicken broth and cottage cheese to keep her camera slim. The studio's demands were relentless. Garland often worked multiple films simultaneously, with schedules that kept her working until 4 or 5 in the morning. To maintain this pace, she became increasingly dependent on the substances her mother and the studio supplied. MGM controlled what she could eat, how much she could weigh, and when she could sleep. The psychological abuse was equally damaging. Executives constantly criticized her appearance and made her feel worthless, despite her extraordinary talent. Despite the industry's cruel treatment, Garland maintained childlike vulnerability and genuine warmth, with many noting her capacity for kindness and empathy for others who were suffering. Garland's later struggles with addiction and mental health were the direct result of this systematic abuse, Her story remains a tragic reminder of Hollywood's capacity to destroy the very talents it claims to celebrate. Gene Kelly. Gene Kelly revolutionized movie musicals with films like Singin' in the Rain and An American in Paris. His singing, dancing, and acting created some of cinema's most joyful moments. But Kelly's drive for perfection was fueled by deep insecurities about not being good enough, creating a psychological need to push himself and others to the brink. His perfectionism created a hostile environment, particularly for co-stars. During Singin' in the Rain, 19-year-old Debbie Reynolds described working with Kelly as grueling and traumatic. Kelly's relentless demands during rehearsals pushed Reynolds to exhaustion, often leaving her in tears. In one instance, she was forced to rehearse until her feet bled. Paradoxically, Kelly later admitted being surprised that Reynolds still spoke to him after filming, suggesting he possessed enough self-awareness to recognize the cruelty of his behavior and genuinely regretted the pain he had caused. His difficult behavior extended to other productions. Esther Williams described Kelly as deeply insecure and competitive, with his irritation about Williams's height leading to petty demands, including forcing her to slouch during scenes to make him appear taller. Steve McQueen. Steve McQueen embodied cool rebellion in films like Bullet and The Great Escape. His intense screen presence made him one of the biggest stars of the 1960s and 70s. Born to a teenage mother, McQueen was abandoned by both parents before his teens, lived with an uncle who couldn't control him, and suffered physical abuse from his stepfather, trauma that left him with deep issues around abandonment and trust. McQueen was notoriously competitive and prone to jealousy. During The Towering Inferno, he insisted on having an equal number of lines as Paul Newman, even counting them to ensure parity. His teenage years were spent in reform schools, including one where he was sent at age 14 for stealing, an experience that both hardened him and taught him valuable lessons about discipline. His pettiness extended into personal life with bizarre incidents like his feud with neighbor James Garner. McQueen, jealous of Garner's starring role in Grand Prix, allegedly urinated on Garner's balcony as petty revenge. Despite his notorious behavior, those closest to McQueen recognized that beneath his tough exterior was a deeply wounded individual who never fully recovered from his childhood abandonment, leading to occasional moments of surprising vulnerability and genuine remorse. Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer delivered memorable performances in films like Tombstone, The Doors, and Batman Forever. His talent is undeniable, but his on-set behavior earned him a reputation as one of Hollywood's most challenging stars. Joel Schumacher, who directed Batman Forever, famously described Kilmer as childish and impossible, citing his temper and unwillingness to cooperate. One particularly disturbing allegation came from actress Caitlin O'Heaney, who claimed Kilmer physically assaulted her during an audition for The Doors, allegedly striking her and throwing her to the ground, while director Oliver Stone watched without intervening. His behavior on The Island of Dr. Moreau further cemented his reputation, with director John Frankenheimer stating, "I will never climb Mount Everest, and I will never work with Val Kilmer again." Despite his acting ability, Kilmer's difficult personality created a trail of strained relationships throughout Hollywood. Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes rose to fame in films like Blade, White Men Can't Jump, and New Jack City. His charismatic performances made him a leading man, but his off-screen behavior was often erratic and unprofessional. During Blade Trinity, Snipes exhibited bizarre behavior that made working with him nearly impossible. According to co-star Patton Oswalt, Snipes refused to communicate directly with director David Goyer, instead relaying messages through notes signed Blade. He also insisted on being addressed only as his character while on set. The tension escalated when Snipes reportedly attempted to strangle Goyer during an argument. Beyond his on-set antics, Snipes faced significant legal trouble, serving 3 years for tax evasion after failing to pay millions in taxes. While his performances continue to be celebrated, his erratic behavior and legal issues overshadowed his career. Tommy Lee Jones. Tommy Lee Jones has built a reputation as one of Hollywood's most respected actors, with commanding performances in The Fugitive, No Country for Old Men, and Men in Black. However, His off-screen demeanor tells a different story. Jones is famously aloof and has been described as dismissive and cold in his interactions with fans and press. He's notorious for refusing autographs or photos, often walking away without acknowledgement. One of the most infamous stories involves his time filming Batman Forever with Jim Carrey. Carrey revealed that Jones told him outright, "I hate you, I really don't like you, and I cannot sanction your buffoonery." This candid hostility created a tense atmosphere on set, though both maintained professionalism during filming. Faye Dunaway. Faye Dunaway delivered extraordinary performances in Bonnie and Clyde, Network, and Chinatown. But her on-screen brilliance was often overshadowed by her reputation as one of Hollywood's most difficult stars. During Mommy Dearest, co-star Rutanya Alda alleged that Dunaway slapped her hard during a scene, an unplanned action that left Alda visibly shaken. Dunaway was reportedly fired from the Broadway play Tea at 5 for creating a dangerous environment, with crew members alleging she threw objects and berated staff to tears. Stories of her strange personal habits, including inappropriate bathroom behavior in her dressing room, only added to her controversial reputation. Despite these incidents, Dunaway remains revered in cinema, though her legacy is complicated by her off-screen behavior. Kefir Sutherland. Kefir Sutherland became a household name as Jack Bauer in 24, winning an Emmy for his intense portrayal. However, several co-stars criticized his professionalism and temperament. Freddie Prinze Jr., who worked with Sutherland on 24, called him the most unprofessional person in the world, claiming that working with him made him want to quit acting altogether. Shohreh Aghdashloo, another co-star, described Sutherland as difficult to work with, citing his apparent anger and lack of collaboration. Aghdashloo suggested that her character's sudden exit from the show may have been influenced by their strained working relationship. These accounts present a stark contrast to Sutherland's heroic on-screen persona, painting him as a volatile figure behind the scenes. Macaulay Kulkin. Macaulay Kulkin became a household name as the star of Home Alone, but his transition to adulthood was troubled. As one of the most recognizable faces of the 1990s, Culkin struggled with fame's pressures from a young age. Fans who encountered him during this period often described him as dismissive and arrogant, contrasting sharply with his wholesome child actor image. His personal life became tabloid fodder due to rumors of substance issues and erratic behavior, combined with underwhelming film roles that caused his career to falter. In recent years, Culkin has made a quiet comeback, appearing healthier and more grounded. However, his early adult struggles remain a reminder of fame's toll, particularly on child stars. Meg Ryan. Meg Ryan was once America's sweetheart, captivating audiences in romantic comedies like When Harry Met Sally and Sleepless in Seattle. However, her public image took a dramatic turn in the early 2000s following several controversies. The most notable scandal occurred during Proof of Life, when Ryan had a highly publicized affair with co-star Russell Crowe, leading to the breakdown of her marriage to Dennis Quaid and generating widespread negative publicity. Reports from colleagues suggest Ryan became increasingly difficult to work with, often demanding special treatment and clashing with others. Her behavior during The Women was marked by similar allegations, with insiders describing her as entitled and dismissive. While Ryan has largely stepped away from the spotlight, her fall from grace serves as a cautionary tale about public perception's fragility. Rudy Vallee. Rudy Vallee was one of the first major music stars of the 1920s and 30s, celebrated for his smooth voice and charming stage presence. With his signature megaphone, he set standards for performers who followed, extending his fame into radio and film. Born in Vermont, Vallee's early life was marked by frequent moves and financial instability, which instilled a deep fear of poverty that later manifested in his obsessive need to control his career and his ruthless treatment of employees. Vallee's notorious temper and clashes with colleagues became defining aspects of his reputation. His violent outbursts and cruel treatment may have stemmed from feelings of inadequacy and constant worry that his success was fleeting, leading him to lash out at anyone he perceived as a threat. During live broadcasts, Vallee's outbursts were legendary. he frequently berated orchestra members, often humiliating them publicly. His aggressive tendencies extended to physical altercations with photographers and audience members who he felt disrespected him. Paradoxically, those who knew Valley noted moments of unexpected generosity, particularly his genuine desire to help young performers succeed, though these positive qualities were often overshadowed by his explosive temper. Milton Berle. Milton Berle was a television pioneer, earning the nicknames Uncle Milty and Mr. Television for his role in popularizing the medium. His charisma and comedic timing made him one of the most recognizable entertainers of TV's golden age. Berle's outrageous public persona masked deep insecurities about his talent, stemming from a childhood where he felt overshadowed and constantly battled to prove himself worthy of attention. Known for his overbearing personality and controlling tendencies, Berle gained a reputation for being unprofessional. One of the most controversial aspects of his career was his habit of stealing jokes from other performers. While this wasn't uncommon in early comedy, Berle's unapologetic approach earned him scorn from peers. Friends noted that Berle's theft of material reflected a psychological need to be loved and accepted, having grown up feeling like an outsider who had to fight for his place in show business. His most infamous incident occurred during his guest hosting on Saturday Night Live, where he ignored directors' instructions, disrupted the live broadcast with inappropriate ad-libs, and gave unsolicited directions to crew members. His antics created backstage chaos, and the SNL team vowed never to work with him again. William Frawley. William Frawley is beloved as Fred Mertz on I Love Lucy, where his comedic timing helped create a timeless classic. Born into modest circumstances in Iowa, Frawley's early life was marked by financial instability that later manifested in his obsessive concern about money and job security. However, behind the scenes, Frawley's personality was far less endearing. Known for his gruff demeanor, quick temper, and heavy drinking, he was a notorious troublemaker on set. His drinking problems stemmed partly from deep loneliness and his inability to form lasting relationships, as evidenced by his failed marriage that ended in divorce after just a few years. To manage his behavior, Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz implemented a strict policy. If Frawley showed up intoxicated or disrupted production more than once, he'd be immediately fired. Despite this ultimatum, he managed to stay on the show for its entire run, though not without frequent clashes. One infamous aspect of Frawley's behavior was his animosity toward Vivian Vance. The two reportedly disliked each other so much they refused to speak off camera, while their constant bickering created comedic gold on screen. Despite his difficult reputation, those closest to Frawley recalled moments of unexpected vulnerability, particularly his deep fear of being alone, which ultimately came to pass when he suffered a fatal heart attack while walking alone in 1966. Lucille Ball. Lucille Ball is a comedy icon and television trailblazer, beloved for Lucy Ricardo and her groundbreaking work as performer, producer, and studio executive. Yet Ball's rise to stardom was forged through tremendous childhood hardship. Her father passed away when she was only 4, leaving her mother to struggle financially, while Lucille was sent to live with stern step-grandparents who believed nothing in life was to be enjoyed. However, Ball's off-screen persona contrasted sharply with her bubbly on-screen character. Her behavior behind the scenes was described as demanding, aloof, and sometimes dismissive. Ball's strict approach to relationships likely stemmed from her childhood experiences of poverty and instability, having learned early that survival depended on maintaining control. A particularly infamous story highlights her interaction with a flight attendant during a plane ride. According to reports, Ball refused to speak directly to the attendant, instructing her assistant to relay messages instead, allegedly saying she doesn't speak to the help. Even among peers, Ball's reputation was polarizing. Richard Burton once referred to her as a monster of staggering charmlessness with an inability to find humor off camera. However, those who worked closely with Ball witnessed acts of unexpected kindness, particularly her genuine concern for crew members' families and quiet financial assistance to colleagues facing hardship, generosity stemming from her own memories of childhood poverty. You know, after diving into all these stories, it really makes you appreciate the performers who managed to be just as wonderful off-screen as they were on it. The good news? There are plenty of those stories too, and they're just as captivating as the scandals. If you're hungry for more behind-the-scenes tales from Hollywood's golden age, both the shocking and the heartwarming, make sure to subscribe and let us know in the comments which classic star you'd like us to explore next.